So, Patrick, welcome to our podcast. We're very, very excited to have you as our guest. And I think this is the first time we have had an insider coming on as a guest, someone who has gotten underneath the surface of the world of Angelina. And so we don't want all of the gossip, but we want to understand all of the mechanics of everything that goes on behind the scenes, because Angelina has hundreds and thousands of fans all around the world who are fascinated by what she does and how she does it.
Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
And Patrick, let me introduce Robert. You have met him already in California. And in fact, it was Robert who said to me, you should get in touch with Patrick Ercolini because he is very accessible and easy to talk to. And he knows a lot about what happened during the concert. And so it was Bob's enthusiasm about you which allowed me to get in touch. And here we finally are.
Thank you, Bob.
You also have some insights, Bob, into the world of sound engineer, isn't that right?
I've been branching out from a musician to actually being more focused on production and live sound.
And this is Pontus, and he is my sidekick, and he is from Sweden, and he and I do the regular podcast, but Bob is a special co-host for the occasion. Let's start with talking about your background, because you are both a sound engineer, and in fact, you were the sound engineer for her concert last month in California. And in addition to that, you have your own company which specializes in the entertainment industry.
Patrick, I have a question. How much of your work is with live performance? And do you do a lot of studio work as well?
So when I got interested into recording music, I initially started with studio work. I remember in my old apartment in Hollywood, I built this sound-proofed room out of a closet. I had to put like some sort of like a fan, and it was like a big build back then. And my first client was a hip-hop artist, I remember. He came over, and I was there for the whole afternoon, and I hated it. I hated it just because one of the things that I do right now is I usually do not work with an artist unless I like the artist, because I like the idea of enjoying what I do. So because of that, I immediately switched to live sound. That's long story short.
But what other type of background do you have in music? Are you a musician from start, or is it more of the technical side of it?
When I was a teenager, I played guitar. And Robert, you told me that, you guys there was a show in Pittsburgh where the engineer was probably like a metal guy. There was a lot of drum and bass and guitar. I nodded and I was like, oh, that sounds terrible. The truth is I started playing guitar when I was a teenager. I played in we played in rock bands, we played in metal bands. The first few bands that I actually was able to tour with. But I like to branch out. And I believe that the singer in a band, like voice, is like the most important instrument.
Now, have you done any music production work with samplers and things like that?
Not really. I steer away immediately, and I just from like recording, and I went to live sound, and then from there I went more deep into the actual full production aspect. So lighting, video, and creating a show, and the whole flow. And then from there I went into the actual logistics of a whole tour, right? So you have security, catering. I feel like I'm very lucky. I got to meet a lot of good people along the road that they showed me how to do things. They were there to support. It's a tough industry to navigate just because there is not really a blueprint. So having good people around, I think it's been wonderful.
And how did you arrive 6 weeks ago at the El Rey Theater to be Angelina Jordan's sound engineer?
How complicated you want me to make it?
You make it complicated and I'll do the editing.
When I started touring with the rock and metal bands, I hopped on a bus. I had no experience. And I remember my first show was in Tucson. It was terrible, to be honest. I wasn't any good. But every night you get a different show in a different venue, in a different room with different crew. It's a learning curve. I found myself off tour in LA and I wanted to keep working, and I ended up getting a job with this company in Hollywood. They were doing event premieres. Some of their clients are Netflix and National Geographic, and they had a different approach to entertainment. They had this white glove approach where everything is clean and thoughtful, and it's done with purpose. And I love that. I believe that when you have an idea and you have a purpose, you go for it. It's gonna pay off in the long term. So my early career was alternating a lot between touring and working a lot of these live events. So I was a production manager for a hip hop arena tour. It was wonderful, and I loved it. I loved the energy. I love everything that comes with it. It was a lot of work, and after that, I decided to not go on tour, and I decided to stay in LA and start my own company, and hence Live Pros, which is basically a combination of both. We can do white glove activation events as well as concerts, which is like two things that I like the most. We do sport events, fashion runways. The reason why I'm bringing this up is the week that Angelina played. It was the busiest week of the year for my company. And I was coming from 4 days where I was sleeping probably like 3 hours, 4 hours a night. We would end one show and go set up another one. And early in the week, I got a phone call from my friend Marco Echeverria. He's a session drummer. He plays with a lot of artists. Me and him did a concert in Mexico. That's where we met for Sofia Reyes, a Latin singer. And I get a call from him. He said, hey, just so you know, I got hit up by someone at Republic. They mentioned my name. I unfortunately cannot mix the show on Sunday. There is this artist. I do not know the name. Will you please go and do this for me? And so over there, I'm already breaking my rule, which is I need to know who the artist is. And I tell him, look, you're really finding me like a really tough spot this week. It's really hard. And he tells me, look, I'm calling you because I know you can do this. The only thing I know is that something happened. They want someone that can make her vocal sound great. So I'm calling you. So that's how it started. And I told him, I said, look, if you ask me for a favor, I'm going to have to do it. We did a lot of events together, and he was a big help in a lot of situations. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll do it. So I arrived at El Rey. I don't know how many hours I slept at the end, but I know how many coffees I had. And I remember I arrived at the venue and I talked to their house crew, which they were great. And they were like, oh, so you are Angelina's engineer. How is she like? What does she want? What does she sound? How does the band like? To be honest, guys, I have no idea. All I heard was I was driving. I put my headphones on, go on YouTube, look at a few videos, probably like 10, 15 minutes. And I was blown away. I was like, wow, she can sing. I got nothing to worry about. As long as I get the vocals right, I think people will forget the kick drum is not the way they like it. But I'm like, the vocals. I was amazed.
Were you familiar with the equipment at the El Rey Theater?
Well, they had a digital console. I've used that before. I can grasp a little bit of all of the consoles. But for me, mostly it's I go and you play pink noise. I play music. It isn't the same vibe or music that I really know. And I just try to get an idea about how much to push certain areas or like where there's like a strange resonance.
Now, do you bring your own mics for that, or are they provided by the band?
With my company, we do. In this case, the venue was providing everything, and it depends a lot of usually like if there's union venues or non-union, but this venue had everything they needed. So they set up the stage according to the plot, and all I had to do was focus on the console, which was a great help.
Now, do you set up the mics for the drums, the different channel feeds for the guitar, bass, keyboards, and so on?
Usually there's a stage technician that does that. If I do have an issue with how something sounds, or if there's something in particular that I want it placed in a certain way, then I do go and just like adjust it myself. I think, especially as an engineer, I like certain things to sound way that I like.
95% of people will be like me, who know nothing about what a sound engineer does. And so take us from step one. What does a sound engineer do? What are your priorities? And what's your job description as a sound engineer?
Okay. The way that I like to say is my job is to take a sound that through a microphone, through a console, in a room that has some reverb might not sound correct to our ears. And I apply compressors, equalizers, different type of effect so that the sound comes out as correct, so that it's pleasant for people to hear. And then I adjust volumes and levels. So drums, guitar, vocals, the different effects, so that I try to make it sound pleasant and create emotion on the listener.
So are you constantly having to adjust it as each song progresses?
Yes, I do. There's two approach to this. There's a little bit the modern approach where a lot of engineers do not touch faders. They don't touch levels and they just process things a lot. I consider myself a plus one member of every band that I work with. My hands are like this on like the different levelers. And sometimes I close my eyes, to be honest, and I'm just going with the music. I just let it guide me.
In particular, I've talked to a number of people. They want to know what you did with the drums to make them perfect. Throughout the concert, when the drums needed to be powerful, with the opening number, Bad Valentine, they were powerful. But in other numbers, they were set way back in the mix, but you could still hear every instrument clearly. So it comes through.
Star shining bright above you, night breezes seem to whisper, I love you.
And my hands are on the console. So as the song starts, the first few seconds, I'm already doing some quick moves and I'm trying to go with the vibe of the song. Compression is for everything, just because a lot of drummers are dynamic. When I compress it, you have less of this poking out and you just tuck things in.
How much of the set list did you do during sound check? Did you go through the entire program?
No, not at all. They were playing bits and pieces, which works for me. I think some of the management was looking at me during sound check and they had no idea what I was doing. Because to me, when I'm trying to build a mix, they say they're playing, all my levels are down. I bring up the kick drum and the bass and I'm like, okay, do they sound good together? Good. Then I take down the kick drum and I bring up the guitar. So you have all these levels going up and down. And I think people were a little confused about the way I was doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't worry, it's gonna be okay.
How much interaction did you have with Toby, Anthony, Angelina before the concert?
Angelina, just a little bit. I introduced myself when she arrived. Toby was a great help, to be honest. So when the band started, we started the sound check just with the band. Angelina wasn't there. And Angelina showed up later. She did like a couple songs. And Toby was with me when Angelina came, right? And literally I was like, what do you like about Angelina's voice? And Toby told me, I like her when it's warm. I want the reverb to wrap her voice, right? And to stay warm. And I'm like, perfect.
I noticed in a number of the numbers, you were very brave with the use of delay. And in fact, at the end of I Will Always Love You, at the culmination of the concert on the outro, you brought the delay way up for that last piece. That was pretty gutsy.
I was brave, for sure.
You mentioned the M word. You mentioned management. Who were you dealing with in terms of the management of Angelina?
Her mother and then Toby. They were the two people. They were hands-on and make sure everything was properly done.
But You didn't have any direct dealings with Republic Records, did you?
No, not at all.
Okay. And did you get to meet Michael, her uncle manager?
No. It was an intimate show,
Yeah.
I guess.
And also, like a background story is, of course, that like Robert and many of her fans, they go to all her concerts. So they hear the sound different in all those locations. And now you come along, and for the first time, they go, wow, the sound was really good in this one. So you have to do a little bit of that, like this.
I didn't do anything. I think Angelina was great. During soundcheck, I had my headphones out. She was singing. I muted the whole band on my headphones, just her, and I just wanted to listen to her. So I just got to listen to her vocals. And then I was preparing the way usually I mix it, but I have a delay and three different type of reverbs. So one is a plate. So think about like Abbey Road, the Beatles. One is a big hall, and another one is a room. And what I'm doing a lot during the show is just creating, like changing the different type of reverb to create like an ambience, depending according to the song. So that the idea was to create this intimate. We are in a big house, and she's playing for a lot of friends. So that's the type of vibe that I was going for.
And I think that's what a few of the people that went to this concert also described it as like a family gathering.
She has fans that come from all over the world to go to her concerts. I've been to every concert in the United States. When she goes over to Europe, I will probably plan on going to those as well. And among them, there are a lot of musicians, sound engineers, videographers, and we have sort of a consortium. I don't know if you've seen some of the recordings that we've put up of the concert. A lot of it is done with cell phones. We smuggled in some little higher quality recording equipment, and two people in particular, Chris Walker and James Steele, gather all of the recorded output of all the different fans sitting around the theater, and they have been mixing it up. There has been a desire after the other concerts that she get a sympathetic sound engineer. And when you happened along, it was like a gift to her many fans that happened. And the results live in the theater spoke for themselves. And they're coming out with the recordings and videos that we're producing afterwards. It's coming through even more apparent. So your work is very appreciated amongst her avid, some might say fanatical fans.
Thank you.
Patrick, it was 6 weeks ago when the concert happened. What stands out for you? What particular song or what particular moment? You must have a lot of stories about what your experience was during the actual concert.
Yeah, so this one is a good one. Toby goes on stage halfway through the set, and they're gonna perform piano voice version of Bad Valentine. So they start playing. I don't know why. I am not getting signal from the keyboard to my console. So the song starts, and basically you can just hear her and a little bit of the keyboard that is basically spilling from the stage monitors. So I'm on the radio with the stage technician. I was like, guys, I'm not getting anything. So the stage technician is like, okay, I'm going to go on stage right now. I'm going to swap the cable. I'm going to pull everything, right? I was still hearing a little bit of the keyboard, and he's about to pull it. And I tell him, just stop. It's okay. Just do it at the end of the song. I felt when she started singing, before it was a gathering in a big house, I said, this one was like her in a bedroom. It was like just her singing, like, you know, just for me, right? And so what I did, I brought down a little bit the level of the vocals instead. A little bit of the spiel was coming from the keyboard. And then all I did was just work with those reverbs that I was talking before, just to create the ambience, the warmth. And I was like, I said, let's see who notices, and let's see how much hate I get for this.
I stood you up on that time, gave you no reason why, decided I got you on without a tear in my eye. I hit too high when I saw you. I was on table 5-2. I knew I'd never see the sunshine with you, so I spent my night with the moon.
The other side of that was I've been working with a sound engineer in England named Philip Ashley's with the BBC. And I sent him all of my 32-bit recordings, and he was balancing and sweetening them up. And we got a beautiful voice, but we were both saying, boy, it sounds like the piano's in another room. And we were going to, he was busy with something over in Hong Kong at that point, so he couldn't play with it. And I saw your preliminary interview with Alan, and I got to him. I said, don't touch it. It's a historical artifact. Leave it exactly as is. That's what we heard. It is what it is. Now, you did bring the piano back in on Thank You, which was the other number she did with him as a duet.
Yeah.
But I noticed that you didn't really bring the piano that much forward even on that one at that point. So
I have to keep it consistent.
Oh, absolutely. If that piano would have come in mid-song, it would have been a disaster. Were you surprised at the diversity of her music? What a wide variety of genres she covers?
I was impressed. I called my friend Marco after the show and I was like, thank you. And he's like, why? You probably don't know, but this was a great way to end the year. Her voice was incredible. I didn't have to do much to the mix, but also the crowd. I have to say the crowd was responsive. It was like the whole vibe. So many people before her set came to me at front of house, Bob here as well, when I got warned about the vocals. And I was like, okay, I think it's the third person that tells me that. So I know it's something that is very important and I'll do my best. But I can tell that people do care. And the ambience was like so warm. I'm really happy that I got to do this.
I noticed after the concert that you were talking with Toby. Did he give you an attaboy?
He was, I got a thumbs up. So he's German, they're not super warm, but the thumbs up, I'll take it. I'll take the thumbs up.
Not knowing so much about what you do. If you had been very familiar with Angelina Jordan's repertoire before the concert, do you think your experience or the way you would have done the sound engineering would have been different? Or was there no disadvantage for you, basically not having heard her before?
Oh, I think it would have been way different, to be honest. Bob was saying like there was a song where you were brave with the delay, right? And when you don't know an artist, sometimes our thought is, as engineers, let's not push it too much. I didn't know the songs, to be honest. But for me, learning the repertoire of an artist is like you're the extra member of the band. You know when to bring up the drums and the guitars. And my whole process is about like changing levels and creating different dynamics in music. So learning the song is like important for what I do.
I think that the fact that you were hands-on and in the moment throughout the concert served you well, because her music is not set and forget, because sometimes she's like super powerful and other times extremely intimate. And the fact that you were tracking along, I think, showed up. And a high point for me was in It's a Man's World. You had the trade-off between the guitar solos and the harmonica, and the trade-off between sax and her vocal. They were perfect. The guitar work was always there. You could hear it, but never overwhelming. You brought them into the mix. When I worked with my jazz band, we have a lot of jam sessions, and people walk up and you don't know what their style's going to be, how they're going to work with the mic. And I'm very hands-on too. When they step up to do their solos, I try to bring them forward. Some horn players overpower others, and you try to have them balanced. So you can't just do a sound check and then sit back and put your feet on the table. And it really came through. I could see throughout the night, it was tasteful for the wide variety of music that she does. And I hope that they're going to contact you for future concerts.
I hope so too. I would like to get to mix her again, now that I know the songs.
As fans, who do we need to contact to push you, to promote you for the next concert?
All we need to do is publish this video, this podcast, Pontus. That's all we need to do. Patrick, when I make a video, I know I can tweak it with the editing and that I can change the editing a lot. When you do the sound engineer, you're doing it immediately right then and there. But do you do editing afterwards, or you just focus on how it is live, and do you adjust it afterwards the way I would adjust the video afterwards?
No, on a live scenario, you don't get second chances.
Okay.
So it's a little unforgiving, but also I like it this way.
It's sort of like being a jazz musician. You have to improvise as you go along and think on your feet.
I honestly actually think that jazz players understand engineering on a level because it's all out about dynamic. And so that's another reason why I like this. To bring up to the set list, what Bob was saying, her intro, Carol the Bells. I had the toms and the drums that were like so loud because I want them to be like thunders. Because it was just the opening. It was like, okay, if somebody's half asleep on the chair, I'm going to wake him up right now. And then bring down the drums and you start with very low drums just as a filler. I like to build dynamics and jazz musicians, it's all about that. So I love that.
You can lay back in a song, but it's really important how it ends. I keep the bass back in the mix, but at the end, I always bring it up because that just rounds out the sound and fills the theater.
Patrick, did you have a proper training to be a sound engineer, or is it just an extension of you being a musician?
So I went to music college. I went to Musician Institute in Hollywood. I didn't graduate. I went for 6 months and I did not study engineering. What I studied was harmony and music theory. So that's the only formal training that I got. Everything about operating consoles, and it comes from experiences. I played a lot of, like, say, tours, right? You have a couple of bands playing before you, and sometimes you have a band playing after you, and sometimes you have a local band with an engineer that has a certain way of doing things. And I always gotten curious about things. And when you are on the road like 6 months out of the year, you get so many shows under your belt and you see so many different things, so many different cities. That's how I did it.
And in fact, everything you learn in college is theory anyway.
It is. Absolutely.
It's what sounds good is the point.
Which other songs stand out for you from her concert? Which ones surprised you? Which ones knocked your socks off?
Well, Bohemian Rhapsody. Bob, what did you think about that?
Bohemian Rhapsody is famous. She performed that on America's Got Talent, and that arrangement so impressed the original band that they gave her a copyright to her arrangement. Or was that the first time you heard it?
First time I heard it.
So you had no idea what was coming. So you had that same impression we all get when she does that with the a cappella intro and a very simple guitar keys background. It's a goosebumps experience for people, for sure.
I work with some artists which they do a cover of Bohemian Rhapsody, but the arrangement was completely different. I never heard anything like this for this song. And in my head, perhaps you're biased by all the covers that you listen. You're like, okay, this is going to happen next. And then it doesn't. And so I'm like, okay, what is next? So I was getting surprise after surprise after surprise. That arrangement it's incredible. I was not expecting that at all.
Does that level of surprise interfere with you doing the live sound engineering? Does the element of surprise override your judgment, or can you just marry the two?
I honestly feel like people are forgiving on a live scenario. If you were to listen to it again, could have done something different to the kick drum or to the snare drum. Yes, that's why I feel like as an engineer, you are never 100% satisfied of your work. It's like you're always chasing for the next show to learn something, to do it better. That's why I say I would like to get another shot at mixing her, because now that I know the set, I can do even more. But at the end of the day, people are there for Angelina. And so my goal was I have to make her voice heard, or I need to make her voice sound warm. I need to make her voice sound good. And everything else, I feel like people will forgive me. That was my mindset when I went into it.
The board at El Rey and other theaters like Alex I've heard her at. What facilities do they have on site for recording? If you would do concert recordings, what would be needed to make that happen?
Sometimes from the front of house console or the monitor console, you just plug a computer and they have their own software and you can like multi-track and you can record everything separate. It would be dry, no effects. So just like the signal raw as it goes into the console.
I think that one of the biggest wishes among the fans and even us, the crew that are actually recording our concerts would be to get better quality audio right directly off the board. I don't know how much her team is aware of the videos that we produce. I assume they are because they seem to be responding to them. Toby in particular had made a couple comments on James Teal's recordings, but one of our wishes would be to get access to sound off the board. And in turn, we would love to share the video that we record with her team when they're producing, because we're getting shots and angles that even the staff photographers can't get because we're in amongst the audience. And we'd love to see like more collaboration along those lines in the future.
Patrick, the way you work, when you arrived at the theater, were there any equivalent of rehearsing? Or did you just start cold? Did you have much contact with the band about what would happen, or you were just thrown in at the deep end?
Not really, to be honest. I showed up, the band was there, they got everything set, and then they started jamming and playing and trying things.
Did you know any members of the band?
No, I didn't know anybody.
Did you work with Anthony much during soundcheck?
No. Not at all. I got this job through my friend Mark. So I think Republic did initially call him, and then my name came out. But no, I didn't know anybody.
Normally, would you be familiar with the band beforehand? Normally, would you rehearse with them? Is that a normal scenario of what would happen?
It depends. There's bands that I go in the studio rehearsing for a month before hitting the road. I've done that. There's bands that you do 2 sessions and go. Every artist has different requirements. And I feel like with Angelina, because of how good she is, it's not a concern. If I was as good as Angelina singing, I wouldn't worry about it. And that's why some artists, they don't go to the initial sound check. They show up at the end. I'm like, I know what I'm doing. Some artists, they need confidence and they're not great performing. They don't have a long experience performing and they need more time rehearsing. And then there is a fundamental issue that a lot of people have, which is trust. And you're like, do I trust my members? Do I trust myself? So it really depends on the artist.
Looking back on your experience during the concert, what would you do different if you had a time machine and you could go back?
Drums, I would maybe mix a couple of things differently, maybe on the snare. So if I knew like certain transitions, imagine transitions and your hands move, right? But when you know the song, you move your hands before the transition. So some things would be like tighter, cleaner. Some delays, you have them go in a certain way because you know the song, you know how far to push it, right?
I've just translated your answer into my head. And your answer is, I'm quite happy with how it turned out. I would not change very much.
Yeah, if we take the whole scenario, like a whole week of non-sleeping and how I got to that, I'm pretty happy about it.
I hope we get to see you again as a sound engineer. It would be great. And this is the best advert we can give you, having you on the podcast to show your expertise and your knowledge and your coolness and your musicianship. This is a wonderful way forward.
Do you do theatrical work as well, or just music?
I do anything that involves sound. I do conferences. And if I personally cannot do it, I know a lot of people that are very good for the job. LA has a lot of talent.
The way you described your involvement in this, it was almost like you were invited to a blind date. And I think that date turned out really good.
That's exactly it. It was the last live show I did before the year. And I was very happy. I was glad I got to meet a lot of people. And I was glad I got to do this. To me, it was a treat. In my head, I'm like, Angelina is singing for me. I'm there listening. I'm getting to see a show. I was really blown away. It was really, really nice.
When she did Unchained Melody and she had the Cork Orchestra and a backing track, and there were backing tracks on a number of those. I assume that they're queued up by Anthony on his keyboards, or do they rely on you?
Yeah, Anthony cues that up. I would have no idea when to cue that. So usually in every band, you have in this case, Anthony, right? Besides keyboard, is the musical director with the band. So he's the person that gives direction to the band on how to do certain things. And also they usually cue like orchestra parts or such.
So he basically plays those tracks, and then you just simply have to mix volumes for front of house.
Yeah, in that case, yes. But I've seen shows where she has an actual live orchestra. So it really, like I said, it depends. A lot of artists, they're doing it for logistic reason. Sometimes they have certain parts they're recorded and you use them to bring something to a song.
Patrick, we hope to have you back a second time after you do the sound engineering for her next concert.
Yeah.
Well, this is the best advertisement I could get to do this again. I'll tell you one last thing. When You Wish Upon a Star, after they left, they went back on stage and they performed that song. I was so clueless because they took a good 5 minutes to go back that I had packed my stuff. I was leaving. I was about to walk out.
Well, not only you, I was talking to Toby right when they announced they were going to come back and do the encore, and he was surprised, and he cut me off mid-sentence. He didn't know if he was part of the encore or not, but he ran back toward the stage.
Show ends, I mute the instruments, right? So you don't hear anything from the stage. I take my laptop, my backpack, I say goodbye to the house crew, and I was about to walk backstage to say goodbye to Angelina and management. And as I'm walking, I hear that. And so I'm running back because if they start and everything is muted, you're not going to hear anything. So I'm running back and like I get to do this on the board. So everything on mute and I'm good to go again. And I was like, oof, that was a close call. But that's how clueless I was about.
We fans really like that aspect of her, that she's a jazz musician when she sings, but she improvises when she's not singing. And it's not a matter of it being imperfect. It's a matter of this is how life is. You make it up as you go along. I like that. I can relate to that.
Yeah, I think it was very organic. I feel like it's a great way to connect with the crowd and with the people. And I think in an age where like everything is rehearsed and hyped and not honest, something like this really was refreshing.
A lot of her fans are of an older generation, and they really, really like how human she is and how she shows it, and she doesn't try and hide it. To have a real human being that you can see as human is a big, big attraction.
On that front, a big topic these days are so many recordings and, quote, live performances are not so live. They're actually lip syncing going on, or even during live performances, there's a lot of use of auto-tune and Melodyne. And I guess for Angelina fans, can you assure them that there's no auto-tune going on during her singing?
No, there's nothing. I worked with a lot of artists, so I can watch a live video and I'm pretty good at spotting any of that. I didn't have time to attend any rehearsal, but 10 minutes on YouTube and I'm literally going through songs. I feel good because she can sing. Everything was live was Angelina, 100%.
Thank you, Patrick. You've been great. Just what the doctor ordered. We have a really good view of what happened 6 weeks ago in California, and we have a really good idea of what you do and how you do it. And you are a smooth professional.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And like I said, hopefully we'll get to do this
Yes,
again.
hopefully.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah, hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Patrick.
Thank you.